Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Stone Genius Podcast. My name's Ro, I'm the Stone Genius. You know me, I'm often stoned, I'm always a genius. Welcome back to a podcast. I'm so excited. I have guests on today that I have been looking forward to since we first connected. The topic I find very interesting. I love talking about the afterlife. Spoiler alert! So, without any further ado, I'm going to welcome Liz Entin to the program. She is an author. She is a podcast host. She has an Instagram, YouTube channel. The name of the book is What the Fuck Just Happened. I want to know what the fuck is just about to happen in this program. Welcome to the program, Liz.
Hi, Ro. Thanks so much for having me. I'm honored to speak with a genius. I'm very excited about that.
Well, here,
Yes.
let me stop you. Now, I do qualify. I am a card-carrying genius, but I barely got in. So, like, everyone that's in the society, they all look down on me. And I'm fine with that. I'm in the group. I'm just the low guy in the totem pole. So just temper your excitement until the end. Then you can reassess.
Okay, well, I'm not a card-carrying genius, so I will look up to you.
Aww.
But hi, everyone. I'm Liz. I am author of What the Fuck Just Happened. A sciencey-skeptic explores grief, healing, and evidence of the afterlife. You can find it actually spelled under WTF Just Happened. And I also have a podcast, WTF Just Happened, all about the afterlife, no woo. So, yeah, nice to
That's
talk to
awesome.
all of you.
Now, so how long have you been doing your podcast?
My podcast, let's see, I started it when I was in quarantine. So I guess about 2.5 years now.
2.5 years. That's awesome. So I think I've been doing mine less than that, but it's neat to be able to talk to someone else that also has a podcast because I love to learn. So I also say that genius knows all the things that they don't know. And I can always learn from other people. So what the fuck just happened? What led you to, I guess I'm going to back up here. You said a sciencey-skeptic's look, is that correct?
The tagline is a science for WTF Just Happened. A sciencey skeptic explores grief, healing, and evidence of the afterlife.
So you're addressing this from a science standpoint and as a skeptic?
Yes. I have to be honest, I'm not a professional scientist. That's why I say sciencey. I approached everything. I read the scientists studying this research, and I take a much more science-based approach. I'm not like a believey person. I need verification to think things. I'm not looking for like, believe this because it feels good or trust your intuition. Like I want data and like hardcore experience and some anecdotal evidence. I have to at a certain point accept some anecdotal evidence.
And so, I am the same way to an extent. So I will tell you, and the audience is well aware of this. So I grew up as a Christian. I still identify as a Christian. I still believe Jesus, God, the Holy Trinity, blah, blah, yada, yada. And I'm not dismissing it by blah, blah, yada, yada, but that's kind of, I'm there. But if a alien ship shows up tomorrow and goes, no, that was just a guy, he was fucking with you. I mean, he was flying through your galaxy. I'd be like, okay. I mean, I believe, and the reason I say I believe is because that's how I was raised. So that's muscle memory to me, going to church, learning, and I do feel that. But my wife and I have been together for 27 years. And I say this all the time. If there is something in the universe, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the universe itself. But there's no way my wife and I get together the way we get together, last 27 years, continuing to go strong, if there isn't something there. So I attribute it to God because that's kind of how I was raised. But I'm also not averse to saying, God damn it, when I hit a bad golf shot.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that's kind of where I am. So can I ask, how were you raised as particularly religious believing in an afterlife?
Not at all. I was
Okay.
raised culturally Jewish. Well, my mom's Protestant. My dad passed away, which is what got me onto all of this. And he's Jewish, and but culturally, so like Christmas was Santa Claus, Easter was the Easter Bunny. Like there was no religion, no belief in God, no belief in an afterlife. My parents thought that stuff was nonsense, pretty much. And also, I'll add, some people talk about being an atheist. I never gave it any thought because I was raised in New York in a very secular culture. So the idea of actually believing in God was just completely irrelevant. I don't think I ever had a conversation with a single friend about whether they believed in God. It was just not part of our lives.
Did you ever feel like there was something happened and it couldn't have happened? And you don't even have to attribute it, like identify. It can be like, a UFO, just an unidentified, something that happened in your life. Did you ever have anything, or have you up to this point had anything where you're like, there's got to be something out there? I don't want to attribute it. I'm not sure what it is or what it does. Have you?
Oh, yeah. And before I started studying this, I'd had a couple things, but I didn't, I put them to the side because they didn't fit into my beliefs. And
Right.
studying this, oh my God, everything's happened. I mean, I've really changed my mind. I don't believe in God, but I believe in what I call like non-local consciousness, discarnate consciousness, survival of consciousness. And I'd say before I had two definite experiences before I started studying this. One when I was little, very little, like probably 3. I just remember sort of sometimes hearing a voice in my room that was kind, was like, I love you, and sort of feeling a presence, but
Uh-huh.
it didn't last long. And I didn't really know how to make sense of it. And at that age, everything that happens is brand new. You have no notions of this is possible, this isn't. And I remember asking my mom because I just wanted to understand it, and she couldn't really offer me anything. She was just like, oh, you must have heard the TV, or do you think it could be a neighbor's voice? And I just had this sense that she absolutely had no idea, nothing made sense. And I was like, okay, I must have misunderstood something. And I just
Right.
tucked it away and never thought about it again. Then when I was a teenager, I was away with my mom at a spa and did Reiki. And it was a very interesting experience. And I've always been curious, so I can't say I was like, none of this is possible. It just, I didn't think about this
Right.
stuff that much because it just wasn't. I was always a little curious, but if you'd asked me, was there an afterlife, I would have said most likely no.
Right.
And I my right knee had been hurting, and not badly, but it was just like a little uncomfortable. And as a teenager, you kind of often ignore that stuff.
Right.
And so I was looking at like the spa menu, and we were there a couple days. I thought I'd try all different things, and I'd never heard of Reiki. And the woman explained it, and I was like, that sounds like such like nonsense, but I'm really curious. Tried it, and I felt just like I had a very intense reaction. I felt like the heat all through my body that she was working over, and then she worked over my right knee, and I didn't flinch. I didn't, because my whole body was so relaxed, but I felt like a searing pain shoot through it, and then it shot through it and was gone. And I stood up, all the pain was gone. The way I'd been hurting a little was gone. She said, oh, I worked out that blockage in your right knee. And I was like, that is so interesting and so weird. And,
Right.
those kind of stayed as things I was curious about. But I never really thought much about an afterlife, until I started doing the research. And that's when
And
everything changed.
and so what led to you starting your research?
So my dad passed away. Don't recommend going through that. It sucks. If you don't do it, don't lose your dad.
Can I ask, so my dad just passed, it's just been a year. He passed April of 2022. And so it's just been over a year now, but I was 54 when he passed. So I had a good long life with him. And can I ask, what age were you when your father passed?
Yeah. Oh, you're so lucky. I was like late 20s.
Okay.
So
Yeah, and I would imagine,
yeah.
because I thought about that after the fact, that I have had some friends that had lost their fathers much earlier than me, and and my dad did have a major stroke like in 2009. So the last 13 years he had limited mobility. The last few years he was kind of off. So, but it was still time with him. And I know that I didn't get to appreciate as much as I should have while he was here, but it didn't ever. I mean, I'm glad that I had that extra time. So I can just imagine, because sometimes I'm like, wouldn't he have been happier not being in a scooter for the last 15 years or 13 years of his life? And, I think about all the cool things that happened to him while he was in that scooter. So, it, so you were in your late 20s when your father passed away, and you said that your parents were not particularly thinking of an afterlife, believed in an afterlife, correct?
Correct. Like they both. I mean, just we never really talked about it. I just remember my mom once saying, she really didn't think so. She was like, maybe, she just tries to not like, say she knows anything. She's, not arrogant like that.
Right.
But she just didn't think it was very likely. And my dad and I don't think we ever talked about it. It was just, I don't think we ever had a conversation about it.
Now,
And I think, oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to ask, and you can always just not even answer a question. You can just keep talking and not. But I was going to ask, so was your father's passing, was it sudden or was there an illness? I mean, so just because my dad was ill, it went downhill. So we got to see all of that.
It was pretty fast. So my dad had me much later in life. So it wasn't like, I didn't lose him young. So I didn't lose him when he was young. So in that sense, it shouldn't have been a shock, but I still couldn't really process it at my stage of life. And he had a stroke as well, but it went downhill really fast.
Okay.
But he was pretty much okay until then, though. I have heard from my mom, there were some things that were looking a little like iffy, but I was protected from a lot of that.
Right.
But I didn't really see
So
anything wrong with it.
Even did you notice any change in him thinking about if he knew that death, or was he even aware that, it was coming on quicker than maybe any of you would have liked? Was he aware of that? And did he make any changes in his outlook, or were you aware of that?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So going into your father's passing, you didn't give the afterlife a lot of thought. After this passing, how quickly did that change, and what were the what was the onset of what made you interested? What was the first little morsel that led you down a trail?
Well, my very first thought, and I don't think this was like realistic, but I thought, okay, so most of science fiction, or a large majority of it, seems to come true. Like, if you look at old science fiction from like the 70s, people are on basically Zoom. And
yeah, I mean, I'm much older than you, so I remember like even Dick Tracy, which they made a movie with Warren Beatty and Madonna, I think in the late 80s, early 90s. But that was still hilarious because you could see people on your watch and talk to people on your watch. I mean, that was so far-fetched. Ha ha ha, your watch, okay? Because cell phones weren't even around then. And it seems like everyone has some sort of smartwatch on their wrist that they can literally talk into it to communicate with other people.
Right, and that's what, I mean, like flying cars, self-driving cars, like all that. I mean, we don't have them on a regular basis yet, but they're very advanced technology, Virgin Galactic, that you can just go into outer space for fun. We have robots on Mars. I mean, all this crazy stuff happens that was just pure science fiction. So I thought, well, and this is just one of those thoughts, like, and if it experiences your mind just kind of flashes to random thoughts, and I thought, well, so everything in science fiction comes true. Like, what about time travel? It was just one of those sort of brain-wandery thoughts, like, well, would there be a way, like, when I have kids, give them the information when my dad passes, and it's passed down for like 1,000 generations if our planet lasts that long, and somehow they'll be able to take him to the future, and medicine will be so different. We're like, if that's going on, none of us would know that's going on now,
right?
And so it was just a thought I had, and then I just thought, let me Google that, and that's when I started reading about like Einstein's twin experiment and time relativity, and I was like, wow, so we actually can manipulate time. It's not practical. I mean, there's a lot of physical restraints. I can't, and no one can build a rocket ship that travels faster than or close to the speed of light, which
Right.
would alter our time experience. There's apparently some, if you build a certain type of like dome and with like a type of material that's not available on Earth, they found it with like a density available on, I forget what planet, but like if you build that, apparently you can go in and time moves at a different rate for you. But I was like, this completely to find out, if you're traveling close to the speed of light and it's been like 2 years. I mean, I'm just making up these numbers, but if it's been like 2 years for you, like 20 years would have passed on Earth. And I'm just like, just that changes my whole understanding of how time and speed and space works.
So
And I was like,
here's
that was
something
a very
interesting
bizarre.
that the one of my next shows is going to reference this. I have multiple pages of notes on this. And this is an example of time and space, because I used to say that I thought that I moved through parallel universes where everything seemed the same, but everything was one off. Like I'd be looking for something and it wouldn't be right there. And then all of a sudden it would be right there. It would appear. And so my wife would be like, well, how about if you just didn't see it? And I go, so what's better for you? Me not seeing things that are right in front of my face, or me bouncing through universes? But then I had heard someone, so I did not create this, but I started doing some research on it. They were talking about if you were standing in the middle of a train car, exactly in the middle of a train car, and you had two lights, one exactly on either end. So you're exactly in between the two and they're flashing exactly in sync. And the train starts moving. Because nothing moves quicker than the speed of light, we're just a little bit behind. So everything's just a fraction of the past. That if you're moving the direction that you're moving forward, you would actually be closer to that light than the light that you're moving away from. Even though they're blinking at exactly the same time and you're the exact same distance away from them. As soon as that gets put in motion, it changes. So a lot of what you're talking to, I feel like I'm going to be touching on. So I see, maybe this is the universe getting us together.
Maybe. Oh my God, I'll have to listen to that episode. I mean, those are all the like YouTube videos I was watching and books I was reading
Right.
and all of that stuff.
So you may not say you're a genius, but that may be just because you haven't taken a test. So, but yeah, I mean, but yes, so I'm totally on board with you about that. So continue on. I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just like, you're just so on point with what all my notes up to this interview, my previous notes have been about these subjects that I've been writing about. I mean, that we just talked about.
Perfect. So it sounds like we're in sync. Yeah. So it was like all those things, reading that, knowing that we're looking at the sun and the information we're getting, we're seeing it from like, I don't know, what is it, like 10 minutes ago? I mean, I have my numbers off, but the concept you get.
Yes.
So it's like everything is it's not set in this factual, limited way that we experience. And then, I knew there were other dimensions based on string theory. So then my very next thought was, and this is what I thought at the time, I've since most likely changed my mind, that, okay, so our consciousness is created by a brain, by neurons firing. And I was like, okay, so this happened once. I got to be a person, my dad got to be a person, and it got to be a me. Not necessarily Liz, but I still got to like be an I.
Right.
And so then I thought, well, why could another set of the dumb luck of neurons firing again not get to be another me? Not another Liz, but the way you're you and I'm not experiencing that, I would experience being another person. And that was my very next thought. And then I just sort of had a flash of thought, well, is there ever any possibility that somehow through some mechanism that happened and a memory carried over? And I Googled that, and that's when everything opened up, because I found these two researchers. One has since passed away, Dr. Ian Stevenson, and Dr. Jim Tucker has taken over his research, and they're child psychiatrists. And I'm just going to say, like, present, are and is, even though Dr. Stevenson has passed. It's easier than making it more complicated.
That's fine.
They're child psychiatrists at the University of Virginia. They're professors at the University of Virginia, as well as child psychiatrists, and they've been researching cases of kids with past life memories. And so I Googled that and I was like, wow, they must be just, I bet it's very preliminary research, very possible. Oh my God, no. Dr. Jim Tucker, I started to find he is interviewed on NPR, and they have had in-depth case after in-depth case that they studied very methodically, and a lot of these cases have been verified. And then, I mean, I didn't discover this in a day. I found this and I spent the next few weeks doing nothing but reading their research. And they are also part of a whole division at the University of Virginia that is studying stuff like this. And here's a reputable university, and they have a whole division called the Division of Perceptual Studies. And I mean, that opened a whole bunch of other doors, but just the case of kids with past life memories research was astounding. And I'm just going to give like the most famous case is the James Leininger case, studied by Jim Tucker. And methodical, they're not talking about karma, just pure data. He found a child, a young boy, who was having, like, I forget how the parents specifically found Dr. Tucker, but this boy was having nightmares, and he was about 3 years old, and he kept saying, like, plane on fire, little man go down, plane on fire. And after a long series of tracing this, they found out he paralleled a man who had died as a World War II pilot. The way the child was playing out this trauma, Jim Tucker paralleled to children who play out actual traumas they've been through. He wasn't playing the way children normally play.
Right.
He was playing this the way children who, let's say watch a murder or a death, play out the trauma again and again. And they did even more. They traced everything. It matched up. He knew all this stuff about airplanes. Like he got like a toy airplane because he kept saying he wanted like this certain kind of airplane, I believe a Corsair. And he's like, no, this part's wrong. And the parents checked, and apparently he knew what he was talking about. And it got to the point in the end where he met his sister, now elderly, had a conversation with her, and she was like, I don't know what to say. He knows stuff about our family. And he had 3 dolls, and one had, let's say, like red hair, one had brown hair, one had like blonde hair. And they were like male dolls. And he gave them each different names. And then he ended up meeting the people who were in his Air Force troop, shared memories with them, and he had matched the names of the dolls with men who had been into his Air Force troop at the time, whose hair color matched those colors. And they were like army dolls that he had. So
let me ask you this. How easy is it for you when you going from skeptic to go, I want to find out information, then when you start finding out information? Because I'll tell you, there's an experience like it. I feel like I'm very open to everything, but then it's weird because then I become a very hardened skeptic if someone's trying to prove it, because I think, what was it? Carl Sagan, I think, said like a extreme, I forget what he said.
Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Yes, exactly.
Well, interesting you bring up Carl Sagan, because he said about Dr. Ian Stevenson's work, as well as some other research, he said he doesn't conclude at all that they're kids with past life memories, but he thought his research was thorough and respectable and worthy of further investigation.
Right. Yeah, and that's how. So we have we have a friend of the family who has always been very religious. They are now a pastor at a church, but they had, because possession and things like that interests me. Movies about it will interest me. Stories about it interest me, because generally I'm like, bullshit. I'm picking the story apart. But then here we have someone that would be one of the last people that I would name that would ever lie, or even hyperbole. Speaking hyperbole, that's just not them at all. And then someone in their family had a possession, something that went on, and they described it. And as they're describing this, and because that was the conflict for me, because here I am sitting here listening to this person that would never lie to me in 100 million years, and they're telling me the story, and I'm just like, all I can think about, no, no. So have you ever had any difficulty with these stories that you're finding out? Like, that seems like maybe their parents fed them, or does it all, like Carl Sagan say, does it all sound legitimate that does warrant further investigation?
Well, I was just so amazed. I mean, yeah, I didn't just read 2 books and was like, oh my God, that's it. I
Right.
was like, I don't know if I believe this. There's something going on here. I mean, hence the reason I ended up changing my whole life was this was just amazing. So no, I didn't read those 2 books and was like, that's it. Definitely Jim Tucker is telling the truth. I was just like, I don't know. There's got to be something. For a long time, I thought there has to be a catch, but the further and further I went, I've turned out shockingly one of my mom's colleagues. My mom's a therapist, and she's worked with neuroscientists, and turns out one of her colleagues knew Jim Tucker and said he was very reliable, and I just thing after thing. So yeah, I was like, there's got to be a catch, but more and more and more kept happening, and I was like, well, Dr. Tucker, I listen to him speak, and he's respected by the University of Virginia. I mean, I trust them. I checked. He really is with the University of Virginia. And he was just one of many, through the University of Virginia and other research. I found, University of Virginia has, for example, Dr. Bruce Grayson, who's studying people with near-death experiences. I mean, this was like years of intense researching multiple outlets, and
Right.
started to meet the people. That's what my book is. I was like, I've got to meet these people. I found another research department. There's a woman, Dr. Julie Beischel, and she worked alongside some people years ago at the University of Arizona to start researching studies on psychic mediums. And then from there, she went along with her husband, Mark Bacuzzi, and they founded the Windbridge Institute that does up to quintuple blinded studies on psychic mediums. And I have since met Dr. Julie Beischel and Mark Bacuzzi, and I got to know them, and they're completely trustworthy. I got to meet some of the psychic mediums, and some have become some of my best friends. And I've witnessed inexplicable things myself. And I mean, I immediately, of course, after reading Dr. Jim Tucker, the first one was like, let me see what the skeptics are saying. And
Right.
this was a big eye opener, because I was like, okay, this is going to be explained. Every argument against what he said was so flimsy. They kept saying things that were very addressed in Dr. Tucker's book, and that a lot of them were writing, well, I never read it. Of course it's absurd.
Right.
And that was a big eye opener. And I mean, this is just an hour-long podcast, so like, everything has to be, or I don't know how long, but all I mean is everything, like years of like a slow evolving of my thinking. This can't be true. This it has to be condensed.
Right.
But oh yeah, I mean, I was just like, some people maybe are lying, and also sometimes it's interpretation. Like maybe a very religious person would interpret a possession as a demonic possession, and
Right.
I would probably say, ooh, it might be a mental illness,
Right.
or something we don't.
And see, that's
know.
where that's where I'm jumping to. Even though I know this person would have already vetted those other avenues. Even though they're religious, I don't believe, and I wasn't there, so I don't know for 100%. My belief is that they would not have just jumped to possession, like stub the toe, possession. I mean, I just, but it was, so here's another weird thing. So when my wife and I went to Palm Springs a few years back, many years back now, we were up on this mountain, took this tram to the top of the mountain. We'd just gotten off the tram. And for about 30 seconds, we were just shaking back and forth. And all these people were running out of the buildings, and you could hear all this rattling and stuff. And after 30 seconds, and it may not have been 30 seconds, but whatever the duration, once it ended, my wife and I both looked at each other and said, "What was that?" I mean, it literally couldn't have been anything other than an earthquake.
That's what I was about to say. Sounds like an earthquake, right?
Yeah, so there's no, I mean, and these, everything's rattling, and we're just shaking back and forth. But we still looked at each other, even though it's proof. I mean, right beneath us, but we were being skeptical, even though we were given the proof. So has there been someone that, and this is kind of going the other way, that everyone thought was maybe a past life or something like that, and then was very convincing, and they were almost convinced, and then something turned and found out to be a fraud?
Um, Not that I know of
Okay.
specifically with that, but there are. I mean, I've definitely come across plenty of frauds in this research as well. I mean, there must have been, but it probably wouldn't be.
So,
It hasn't happened within my time frame of
okay.
researching this, so it wouldn't have been written about if it was found to be fraudulent. It would have been pulled most
Okay.
likely and not verified. But
Okay.
I mean, I'm trying to think. I guess there were cases that they started to study, and then they're like, oh, and not in a dramatic way. Like they
Okay.
would start to study things and be like, oh, you know what? Actually, we found out. But yeah, there's
Okay.
been a lot, especially in like the like for lack of a better word, I hate this word, but like haunted house research.
Right.
There's been a lot where they've discovered
Yeah.
that. Majority, I'd say.
Yeah. And see, and those are other things that are weird. I mean, so my wife and I will talk about how we lived in a haunted house. Now, anyone that hears a story, it's vastly different, because as soon as I tell a story, the haunted house story, everyone's like, no, and then all Bobby has to do is go, no, that's true. And they're like, really? And then they want Bobby to continue on. It's like, I'm the one that, but we had moved into our first house here in Kansas City. We moved in, and I had to get up like at 4:30 every morning for work. And I swore I heard a whole bunch of kids talking.
Hmm.
And I would always, I'm like, the bus doesn't come this early. There shouldn't be kids. We don't have boys. And it all sounded like boys, but I could never understand what they were saying. It just sounded like kids talking. And
Hmm.
I didn't want to bring it up with my wife because she's not was not. This was 3 years under our relationship. So she was not probably as open-minded about this. I thought it would freak her out. But then when she would go out of town, lights would come on and come off. And I don't know what else to explain. I mean, I'm not going to say it was haunted. Nothing ever said boo. I didn't see anything, but my wife heard him too. And it's funny because she didn't want to talk about it. We did find out, because we found handprints and some cement that was laid there, that the family that had lived there before did have a whole bunch of boys. I don't think anything happened to them while they were there or anything, but it was just totally weird. Running into stuff that's unexplained. And I was going to ask, have you ever heard, there was a study of, or there was a woman with like ancient Egypt knowledge who she seemed to have left a past life. I don't remember her name. It's a video I saw a long time ago on YouTube. Have you ever run across someone like that?
I haven't.
Okay.
No. I mean, maybe just briefly, but I would probably not have gotten that involved in that one just because it's not that one
It-
doesn't sound verifiable the
right.
way someone who remembers like 9/11, which is a case that's been studied, something from like 100 years ago, things that can be really verified. We can talk to someone's grandkids. So I'm more interested in the stuff that's been verified, but I might have come across it. I don't, but
Okay.
nothing that I remember.
So when you're talking, because I'm a real numbers guy as well, is there a certain age where this seems to be more predominant in presenting itself, where the kids are acting out or they're talking or discussing or it's manifesting, however that happens to be? Is there an age, and is there also, and if knows the answer, that's fine too, is there a distance? Like, you said someone that talked about 9/11 and then something that happened 100 years ago. So does there seem to be any correlation between time frames? Like, it seems like, oh, there seems to be an inordinate amount of kids talking like they lived in the 1870s for some reason.
Yeah. So most kids seem to share memories of past lives from before 5 years old.
Okay.
The strong memories seem to be people who died young, although that's not 100% of the case, young, dramatically, and more recently. Those are the ones who have the really strong memories.
Okay.
Um, I also think the other might be a little more, probably there are a lot of maybe very past, but who's going to take it very seriously the same way? Someone who's
Right.
like, oh, I remember, like, you know, right,
The Knights
like
of the Round Table or
19.
something like that. We like, okay,
Exactly,
King Arthur,
exactly,
yep, you were there, okay. Well, and that's kind of how I
exactly.
feel. So,
Mhm.
and that's so sometimes to me, I feel I have to be open to everything or open to nothing. Like if someone's telling me a story, I have this previous life. I remember the 1960s. I was there the day Martin Luther King passed away. Wow, that's a lot of memories, and like let's go in it because you can verify. But if someone else goes, oh well, I lived during the reign of Charlemagne. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean? It would be
yeah.
easier to discount that person, and I do try myself not to do that. That if I'm going to accept one, I have to accept the other.
Well, you can listen and say one is just maybe, okay, and one is evidence. Those are
Right.
two different things.
Yeah.
You can call something, you don't have to completely dismiss something, but you don't have to put it in the category of evidence.
Right.
And evidence isn't even like a 40-year-old saying they, you know, were remember times from Martin Luther King. They've probably heard stories, even
Right.
if maybe they are genuine hearted and believe it. I wouldn't call that evidence.
Yeah.
And
And I
again, most kids seem to forget their past life memories after 5 years old, but not 100%. But yeah, so evidence is like, especially someone really young, knowing things they could not have. And,
right.
an older person could have something that's verified and shocking and hard to know how they could have known it.
Yeah.
But
And it could be so my wife often, well, she doesn't do it as much anymore. She would ask me like I would spit out a fact. And
okay.
she'd go, "How do you know that?" And I'm like, I literally don't know. I probably heard it
Hmm.
because I do feel like there are people that can remember a few people, verified cases that can literally remember every day of their life. So I do think
Yeah.
I think that's a capability that we all just for whatever reason that's not turned on in us or something. But I do believe I do think that everything's registering. So I probably heard it. I could never tell you when, I could never tell you where, but I just
Hmm.
know. And like it'll be some obscure fact and my wife will look it up and she goes, "Yeah, you're exactly right." So she doesn't really ask anymore because she hates when I go, "I don't know." But so,
Hmm.
but discounting that, because you were saying how someone who's older could have heard a story. And I don't know when I learned that fact. I don't know I was, 8 months old, 8 years old, or 18 years old when I heard that fact, or at my age, 48 years old. So, or anywhere in between. Um,
Right. And we also get information that maybe we're getting information unconsciously. Maybe you overheard people talking about it and never registered on a conscious level, for
right.
all we know. And if you go into like a meditation, maybe you're tapping into things that you heard, without even it registering that you learned it, for all we know.
Right. Right. Okay, so you started studying this right after your father passed away. Where are you at on this journey of information finding, gathering?
Where I left off, not where am I now. You're
Yes.
saying, or okay, so where I left off. So okay, so I found the research of Dr. Jim Tucker and Ian Stevenson, and then from there I started to find more. That's where I read about Dr. Jeffrey Torrance, for example, who scanned psychic mediums' brains and was getting really fascinating results. Dr. Julie Beischel and Mark Bacuzzi with Windbridge were conducting up to quintuple blinded studies on mediums. And they also were scanning mediums' brains. And they did a study where, well, I'll say that mediums now, and I know, and I read this there too, mediums, they say there's a difference between a psychic reading and a medium reading. And a psychic reading is when a psychic medium will give someone a reading and they'll know about a living person and their life and some bits about their future and, you know, like that would be psychic
Right.
information, like reading someone's mind. And then mediumship is when they communicate with someone who's passed away, like a discarnate, loved one.
Right.
Um, and they noticed that there was different brain activity in psychic mediums when they were doing a psychic reading versus a medium reading versus making up a story. And it was different brain activity. And to me, I was like, this is so interesting. And I was like, I've got to see for myself. Like, at this point, I started to read some books by mediums. I'm like, this is so weird. I'm not telling anyone I'm doing this. This is
Right.
crazy. And I was also reading books on string theory. And so I had two full in-person experiences with mediums early on. So first, I very coincidentally, some people might say it's not a coincidence, but I went to a talk at my mom's institute, and it was a young woman about like my age had written a book about a neuroscientist she worked with, and some of the whole team that had worked in his group, including my mom and some of her colleagues, and including a man who'd passed away, had been a big part of it. And this man's wife was there. And this was early on after losing my dad, and I was reading everything, and I was reading the up to quintuple blinded studies at Windbridge, and I was like, I don't know if this is true or not. So I meet this woman, and she just, as if it's the most natural thing in the world, she was the wife of the man who'd passed away, who was one of the people in the book.
Uh-huh.
And she said, oh my God, you wouldn't believe it. My husband visited me. He played with all these lights in my apartment and or my home, because I believe they're outside the city. And she's like, so I went to this medium who told me it would happen. She was amazing. And I was like, oh my God, can I get her name and information? And I was like, I'll try her. She's not certified by the Windbridge Institute. She hasn't been researched by scientists, but it can't hurt just to try.
Right.
And I also, at the same time, went down the Windbridge Institute list, and I was like, let me just go to the first medium who's in New York, because you can go on phone or person. I was like, I want to go in person. I want to watch what they're doing.
Right.
So I found the first medium, and that ends up being this whole long story. But then I reached out to that medium. She had like a 2-year wait list, and I reached out to the non-scientific research medium, and she was like coming like it was like a few months. So I booked with her. The other medium.
Hold on. I'm going to stop right now. So was this
Okay.
during quarantine?
No, this was 2016.
Okay. And that's how long they're booked up? 3 months to 2 years?
Oh, and the one who was supposed to be 2 years, I'm still on her wait list. But that's a whole other. I'll get into that story.
Oh,
yeah.
See, I would have never
Some
guessed
have
that.
like 6 months. I was shocked. Some have like 5 years. Some you can book next month. It really varies. But so the first medium, she doesn't really do it anymore. So I'll just not even give her name, because from what I understand, I haven't gotten to know her, but she no longer does this, and she didn't want to advertise. But so I have a reading with her, and I guess it's in a couple months. And then the other one, I was like, oh, 2 years, I don't know. There were a lot of reasons. I was like, I'll have to try it at some point. But then I found another researcher called Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell, and she'd been with Harvard and Johns Hopkins, and she was also studying psychic mediums. She's studying a bit like autistic children who seem to show these remarkable psychic abilities. And she had this whole, here's this Harvard, Johns Hopkins, really brilliant woman, and she's a professor, and she was writing about research into like psychic abilities and that phenomenon. I was like, I wonder if she could recommend a medium. I was like, I have this one named Laura who had found it through Windbridge, and I write Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell. I thought she was going to write back essentially like, the research is very preliminary. We hope maybe one day we could find something of a mediumship. But she comes back with a name, and it's the same name, this woman Laura, who I had found on Windbridge. And I was like, okay, this is weird. I've got to go to her. So I give a fake name, fake phone number, use a VPN, fake email, everything completely hidden.
Why did you do it that way?
So they don't Google me.
Okay.
or do background checks or go to like, I didn't know what connections they
See,
had.
I'm so lazy and naive that I'm just like, so I went to your website. I did read up, but I don't do it. And even if I did, I'm too much of a stoner to care that much. So
Well, I cared a lot of
okay,
About
so that
the
makes
Afterlife.
sense. So yeah, so
Yeah.
see that's why I would be horrible at doing a research like this, because I wouldn't even think of that. They'd be like,
Oh, it's not,
yeah, are you the
okay.
person that wrote this? Or I'd be like, no, oh shit, and have to hang up on them.
That's so funny. Oh, I did everything like Google Voice, fake name, had friends, not even family members, pay for me if they needed a credit card in advance or PayPal, and I would Venmo my friend, and I had everything. So I got in this woman Laura's wait list, and I went to the other medium with the shorter wait list. And so this was my first reading, and that one was in person. And she just knew things she could not have known. I was like, and at this point, I'd read multiple research studies on psychic mediums, up to quintuple blinded studies. Like, I had just been reading science, science, science. And this was my first experience. And I was like,
So what was your response to
holy
that?
fuck.
I mean,
Like, what the
how did you feel?
actual
I'm just
fuck?
trying to think, like, in your, I mean, are you just, I mean, because nothing, I don't think that's ever happened to me. So I don't even know. I rarely respond to things the way a normal person would.
Okay.
So that being said, I can't even fathom how I would. And
Um,
yeah, that's crazy.
I will do my best to explain, but there kind of aren't words. Like,
Okay.
it's like if you woke up and found a color you never knew existed, and it was like the best thing ever. I was just like, what the actual fuck?
So
Because this is
what
like
was the
next
first
level.
thing or the most memorable thing on that initial visit that they identified that they should not have been able to identify?
Oh my God. Let's see. They, again, I told you my dad had me a lot later in life. So she knew like around the age he'd passed. She knew what my mom did for work. She said, this was really cute because my mom's a therapist. And she said, is your mom like a therapist? Because your dad's showing me a couch, a therapist couch, and that's my symbol for it. And she's like, is your mom like a world famous, like best in the world therapist? Like, she's like, that's what your dad's saying. And my mom's good. She's really good. But, she's not this world famous. But according to my dad, that's how he would describe her. He's like, oh, she's the best in the world.
Right.
And my dad had a favorite color. I disguised it a little bit, but I put it as green in the book because I still get medium readings, and there's certain
Right.
things that are important to me. She said he's sending you bursts of green. Why green? She got aspects of his personality. For example, in the end, she kind of laughed and she's like, I asked him if he wanted to say a message for you, like he loves you, and she said he just laughs and she knows what I think of her, and that's completely my dad. She got that my grandma and I were really alike. She got that my grandma had lost, baby when the baby was young. She got so many things, and she got that my cat had recently died.
So
And I was just,
so at that
it
point
was
where
crazy.
you, I mean, can they tell on your face that I would assume that being face to face that you're with the what the fuck just happened, you have
Yes,
that look, and they're gonna know.
yes,
Okay.
they can, but they weren't like, did you just lose a dog? She
Okay.
wasn't like
Fishing.
fishing and then seeing where I reacted. She was
Okay.
getting accurate, accurate, accurate. There might have
Okay.
been one or two things wrong. At that point, I didn't record. I didn't know you were supposed to record. Going forward, I recorded all my readings. So I
So are
was
they
like,
aware
what?
of that? So why do you record? Just so that you can go back and
So I
listen
can
again?
score it afterwards. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Okay.
they are aware of it. I wouldn't record without a
No,
native
no, and I
person.
didn't mean anything nefarious like that, but I mean not. I
No,
mean
no. I
not
mean, it
just
wouldn't
whether.
be.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
There'd be
So
nothing wrong with if you're doing research to secretly
right.
record as long as you don't show it anywhere. I just
Right.
don't. I wouldn't do that.
Right.
We all have to
So
approach
you
things
didn't record
ethically
on this
first
first one, but on subsequent visits you did. So
with different mediums. Yeah, I've recorded almost every single one since then. Unless I always ask if they say no, then I just take copious notes.
okay. So after this initial reading that they got so many things correct, Once you let, what did you do? I mean, I figure you would probably have to almost like decompress, for lack of a better term, from what just happened.
I was just like, I just couldn't. I mean, I said to my mom, I was like, holy shit, I think this is real. Because I had like, what the fuck after what the fuck, reading story and not just, I mean, not story, like reading quintuple blinded studies. And I started taking a class like at this place called the Rhine Education Center that has a scientific approach to this research. Like I was having and I was just reading like mountains of data through universities. Like Stanford University in the 70s had a department that was doing research on like psychic abilities and consciousness behaving non-locally. So I was just reading thing after thing, and I was getting chills and shocked reading that. I mean, even stuff that's much more, you know, that is mainstream, like string theory. When you delve in, as you know, I someone and Einstein's time relativity. So it was just like this combinations of what the fucks while
Right.
I'm in grief, while I'm like reassessing so much in my life. And so yeah,
So then
so
what was the
then
next step after that? Because I feel like that had to
oh
be
yeah,
not a high, but it had to be exhilarating to have that
yes,
information and now have, if you went into that
yeah.
skeptical or somewhat skeptical, to have your mind change. So then how long did you have to wait till the next reading that you had, and how did that go, the same or
Okay.
differently?
So, oh yeah, I was like, I want to have like readings with all these Winbridge people. I need to meet the people. I need to meet Julie Beischel, which didn't happen until years. Dr. Julie Beischel, it was the researcher that studied psychic mediums. I don't end up meeting her till years later. But what happened next? I was like, I've got to get more readings, and I've got to meet the people. I've got to figure out how are they doing this. I mean, do they have like some facial recognition technology? Is there some CIA? But there's stuff that she couldn't have known. Like
Right.
my cat just died. I mean, she couldn't have known like aspects of my dad's personality. I mean, maybe, but this woman, I mean, they have a huge range of charges, but this woman was only charging $125. She was in a modest suburban home. The amount of money it would cost to have a CIA person following me
Right.
for all that time when I had already given fake information, for her to have done that level of research would be astronomically expensive. And so I so combined with all the research and then having this experiential moment, I was just like, what is going on? So I started to book more readings, and I was like, I have got to meet these people. So remember I mentioned that other medium with the astronomical wait list.
Right.
So this is kind of an amazing story because I ended up meeting my mentor through her. So I so the other woman, Laura Lynn Jackson, I get an email that she has a workshop. And I was like, okay, she has this long wait list, but she was recommended. She's on Dr. Julie Beichel's, like she's passed the certification for Winbridge. And of that group, Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell gave me her name. I was like, I've got to see. She has a lot, and I was reading further about her, and she has books, and I was like, oh my God, she's um had her brain scanned. She works with a lot of scientists, and I was like, I am very impressed by that. There's something going on. Like, I don't know, she could be a total con artist, but she could not be. Like,
Right.
I, she worked also with that one I mentioned earlier, Dr. Jeff Tarrant, and had her brain scanned. And I was like, if this is all true, I had already checked out a little bit. I Googled her and I Googled Dr. Julie Beischel, sorry, because I had a thought maybe there's just one person. There's a writer
Right.
who made up the idea of Woodbridge and made up like 10 different psychic mediums and it's going to write a book about the research and it's going to write a book under each of the mediums' names and it's all bullshit. And that would be maybe a smart business con. It'd be horrible and it'd be
Right.
dishonest. But I can't pretend there aren't dishonest people who try to make money. But I watched videos of Dr. Julie Beischel and Laura Lynn and some of the other mediums.
So
So I
are
said,
you
okay,
are
they're
you
not one person at this. So I was able to eliminate pretty quickly. It wasn't one person.
so are you still an alias at this point?
Well, so I went with to this day, I give mediums fake names. And then I end up like meeting them, and I'm like, oh, by the way, yeah, I gave you a fake name. I mean, so it's kind of, well, yes, when I get readings with mediums, I don't always give a fake name, but I just give my first name, Elizabeth, Liz. Sometimes I give a fully fake name, but if I do I give my real first quite a bit, just because that is done in Dr. Julie Beichel's research studies. So I wanted to follow that. So
Okay.
I do often give my first real name, fake last name, everything else fake, or Google Voice number. Um, Sometimes I'll give a fake first name as well, or like a weird variation of Elizabeth. And I so I go to this. I actually sent up because it was like 2 in the morning. I was in super grief, and I buy a ticket to this woman Laura's workshop, and I use my real PayPal. And I was like, fuck, I cannot believe I did that. And then I was like, well, if she gives me a reading and it's all Googleable information, I'll know how she's doing it. But I
Right.
go to this workshop and she's not giving readings. And I was like, she seems really normal, really like smart. I don't know. Like, I don't know at this point. Like, and I was kind of like, I mean, building up. And I wrote her an email afterwards. And I was just like, at this point, I have to see. Um, and I'll tell you this part, then I'll go into this other part of her next workshop, which was amazing. And I detail all of this in my book too, if people want to hear more of this in depth.
And what was the
It'll
name of
be
the
like
book again?
What the fuck just happened? It's spelled WTF Just Happened. A sciencey-skeptic explores grief, healing, and evidence of an afterlife.
There we go.
Amazon, on my website. I'll give myself a little shout out. My website's just WTFJustHappened.net. So I wrote this woman, Laura, and I said,
So have you had a second reading before you meet Laura? Has or just that first initial reading with someone else?
I think I've had a couple others, and some were not good. And
Okay, because that's what I was going to ask. So it sounded like the very first one you went to was a very positive and
yes,
mind altering, not altering, but kind of thought altering experience for you. So when you ran into a negative, what type were they like? What type of information they were giving you? That I mean, because I can just imagine a fake and how bad. I mean, I'm just trying to think.
well, it was across the board. Let's see. When I went to Laura's, I probably had about 4, which was 3 or 4, which was across the board.
Uh-huh.
The first one just evidence, 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 fact, fact, fact.
Right.
The second one, she knew a few things she could not have known, but there was a lot of stuff that was wrong, and I was like, oh. And then the third one was a total fraud, and very obviously a fraud. And the third one was on the phone. And the first and second were in person. And the second one got a lot wrong and a few things really right. And I could also, I mean, again, this is going on instinct, which, that's anecdotal, but nevertheless, I really felt she was incredibly kind, incredibly honest, and just not as evidential. And people I know her that I've since gotten to meet, and they all said, oh, you don't go to that woman for evidence. She's very spiritual. She's very kind. And she did get a few things right, but I was still like, there's no way Dr. Julie Beischel could, if her data is right, and the University of Virginia, something's going on. And I had that first reading, and Dr. Hennessy Powell seems really honest. And, it was just so much that at this point I was like, worthy of further investigation. I don't know yet. Worthy of further investigation.
Right.
And I cannot explain how that first medium did this. If it was like $10,000, I mean, I've never heard of a $10,000 medium reading. You could be like, okay, she's probably like has some crazy technology that was able to trace like my VPN and
Right.
how I wrote it and my fake, but I maybe. And I still wondered, was there some secret, technology mediums had that connect to computers and can tell VPNs, and I didn't know. But so so I'd had like a few readings. I was taking some classes at the place I mentioned, the Rhine, and
Uh-huh.
I was learning
And then you
this
mentioned a
fascinating
second
stuff.
seminar as well.
Yeah. Well, so after Laura's first, because this is how I got to meet my mentor, who has sadly passed away over 2020 from actually cancer, not COVID, but it was horrible. So I just wrote Laura a quick email. At this point, I was like, I have got to see what's going on. So I wrote Laura and was like, you know, and I wasn't worried, like, too worried about protecting my reading because I had a fake name under my reading. And I wrote her and was like, I honestly at this point don't know what to think. Do you know any people similar to what the research that you've participated in with Dr. Julie Beischel, anyone doing anything like that in either New York or Los Angeles? Because I live in both cities.
Uh-huh.
And she wrote back, check out the Forever Family Foundation. And I was like, okay, like I'll check it at some point. And I like look them up, and they are also certifying psychic mediums using science-based protocols to test them. They have a board of scientists, including Dr. Jim Tucker and some of the others from the University of Virginia. And I was like, this place seems amazing. I was like, I at some point should meet the people. And I looked and it said you have to be a member for 6 months before you can volunteer. And I was like, okay. So I become a member. I'm like, put it to the side. I'm reading so many things. I'm like, okay, at some point I'll volunteer with Forever Family. I'll like look into them. But I was
So
like,
what
I've
does
got to get
becoming a
membership.
member do or mean?
You need to give your email address and you get emails
Oh,
and
okay.
a small discounts
Oh,
at
okay.
their events. It's really, I mean,
Okay.
it's great because you get discounts and you know when their grief retreats and events are before it comes up. But I
Okay.
was like, my God, my dream, I was like, I'm sure I'd have to start at the bottom, but my dream would be to one day be able to join them and learn about the research and join in some of the research. So fast forward, I have a few more readings. Some are like, I think another one at this point that blew me away. And then Laura has another workshop. And I take my friend and I said to him, pay cash. Do not give your real name when you sign up. Don't pay in advance. Give a fake name. So she had my real name and she had my friend's fake name, which
Uh-huh.
comes up. So I go back to her workshop, and this one was just insane. First of all, she had spoon bending, and I bent a spoon, and that was like life changing for me because
How
yeah.
how did you bend a spoon?
So she had a spoon bending activity, and I had heard about spoon bending. I'd always known it existed, but I thought it was stage magic.
Right.
And Lloyd Arbach, who is a parapsychologist and a researcher, and I was taking his class at the Rhine Education Center, had mentioned spoon bending. And I coincidentally, and again, the mediums will tell me no such thing as coincidence. I don't know what I think about that. But the night before Laura's workshop, I had been reading some of the stuff for my class at the Rhine, and Lloyd had also talked about spoon bending, and I thought, I cannot believe this is real. If I was like, okay, when tonight, like after Laura's thing, I'm gonna Google and try to find a place that has spoon bending, because if that is real, there's something going on. Because skeptics who I respect are saying it's nonsense, it's stage magic. Like, if Lloyd's right, that will give some verification. So I go to Laura's workshop, and I mean, a lot of crazy things happened that day, but one of them was spoon. She's like, okay, you're going to do spoon bending. And I was like, oh, whatever. Like, really? I was just baffled. Then I looked over. We have our spoons, and she takes us through like the activities to get it ready, which is basically just getting the energy raised in the room. And I look over, and some of these people next to me are like, well, first you try to bend it using your strength. And I should back up that I also was with my friend who I said give her all fake information. And he's like a big guy. I mean, I know none of your listeners can see me, but I'm like barely 5'5". I'm like a small woman. I am not strong. And I look over, like we try to bend the spoons with our strength. None of
You
us
just your
can.
hands or whatever.
Your hands,
Okay.
yeah. And then we do the energy to raise the vibrations. And I look over and like all these people around me are bending a spoon. And I was like, holy shit. And I felt something, my hands get really, really hot. And the spoon felt really hot. And I just very easily bent over the top of it. And then the spoon was cold and I couldn't bend it again. And my strong friend who could not bend his. So it was not strength. And I was just like, blown away, because that goes against how I understand science to be. That goes against what people say is possible, and I
So your
did it.
friend was never able to bend the spoon?
he was not able to bend his, and I was able to bend mine.
So you had mentioned, being science-based as opposed to faith-based. So what do you think the difference is between you two then? It's almost like, I mean, because I could see a lot of people going, oh, well, you must have just had more faith that you could do it. That's why you were able to do it.
Oh, I had zero faith, but even so, like, I might have had more energy. Maybe it was more. I just remember the shock because I've gone to spoon bending since then, and I've never been able to do it since then. I went to another one that Laura was hosting, and I couldn't do it.
So what percentage? What percentage of the people that were there at that first initial spoon spending, your spoon bending, what percentage of people were able to successfully bend their spoon? Do you know, or do you think?
I have no idea because, like, I was just so shocked when I saw it. To give something I'd feel right about sharing, I would have wanted to count the people and do it accurately. But
right.
I saw quite a few people do it. Like, a good amount of people did it.
So what you would term as a surprising amount? That would be the number of people.
I would say one person
was a surprising amount. Okay.
Yeah, but there was like significantly more than one. Maybe like, I don't know, maybe 20 people. I don't know. I mean, I was only next to a certain amount of people, so.
Okay,
so a lot of people did it.
So now I'm going to put a competition in here. So your initial experience with the medium and all the positive things they got correct, or all the things they got correct, the information they got correct, versus spoon bending. What gave you more exhilaration? I mean, maybe exhilaration is not the correct term, but what gave you more like? I mean, more like now I got to dive into this even deeper.
Neither, both of them. Both, not neither, both.
Okay.
It's about the preponderance of evidence. It just keeps building and keeps building. And it's like when this happens, and this happens, and this happens, and they're all defying the laws of the universe, it's really hard to dismiss. Like, one thing you can say, okay, I do not know how to explain that.
Right.
But, there's got to be a catch. You know, kind of like Mike's, and then you can tuck it away and you don't see stuff like that again. But when you start seeing thing after thing after thing, it's like this compilation of
but if it's not able to be repeatable to you and sometimes not done by others at all, I mean, at some point, or is that what you're looking for? To describe what that is, and if that can be.
Well, it was repeatable. If I just did it one time and no one else ever had, and I had never seen anyone else do it, I would have to say, I would probably have to be like, okay, well, I did that. If I saw one person do it once and no one ever again, and I didn't, I would say, okay, there's a trick.
Okay.
If I had experienced it, that once and no one else had, and I would have to be like, I would probably have tucked it away sort of the way I had Reiki, when I had that one experience before I began researching this. But I've gone to multiple other spoon bending events since then, and I've seen other people bend spoons. And other people who are psychic mediums bend spoons that I could not bend. Because I've never bent one since then.
Okay.
And so, it's just all the compilation. And then afterwards, what was interesting was Laura did readings, psychic medium readings, and she read my friend. And she had my real name and my friend's fake information. So.
But would they have been, because I know that it's that easy to do face recognition. I mean, phones and everything else do it now when you're searching.
Face recognition technology.
So,
possible,
I mean, they could look at you, then scan for that person's picture if they were in any of your social media, and then go real name and go from there. So there's a chance. I mean, I don't know. I'm lazy as shit. I
was watching Laura, and I mean, okay, I know her personally now. I'll say she is incredibly honest, but you tell that's not science,
right?
I mean, but I personally, in doing my assessment, have to say that I have come when I get to know some people, and I really trust them. I trust not only their honesty and integrity, but I trust their assessment. So I trust. But okay, take that away, because if I said that to Carl Sagan, it wouldn't count. Right. That being said, the information she knew about my friend was not Googleable.
Okay.
And it's a weird combination of being not good enough to be Googled and too good to be Googled, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
if you were to Google, you would say, I know the name of your father is blah, blah, blah. He lived at this X address, and here's his full name, and he passed this date. That's the Googleable. She said stuff to my friend like that captured his personality. And could that be done fakely? Sure, you would take a year and have researchers going and asking and sneaking around and asking about the family. You know, these tickets were like, I don't know, a couple $100 that she didn't know this person was coming. And doing that, what, for like person after person after person? It's
Right.
just, it's not possible. And the things she knew, like, she knew this thing that he did with his mouth, and I forget all of it. Like,
But
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 I ended up
enough
seeing
a
my friend's
preponderance of stuff that
sister.
they shouldn't have been able to find out.
Right, and
Okay.
doing this to multiple people, you know, and as well as reading the studies that she and some others had passed through Windbridge, and watching. Yeah, I
So
mean,
so it
you can't.
sounded like when you had your initial one and she was talking about your father and the couch and everything, that she was communicating with him. Like, is there ever of like, well, what are you doing? I mean, why do you have time for this conversation? Like I just kind of wonder what. So here's my thing. So one of my big things when I get to funerals, I'm horrible when someone gets up there and they'll say, you know, oh well, when this person entered heaven, you know, all of their relatives or the people that passed before them are waiting for them with open arms, and I will outwardly and visibly shake my head because
Why?
in the way I and the reason I do this, and people ask me, it's like, okay, let's say, so my feeling is if there is an afterlife, it's either going to be amazing, and that's the only adjective I have. I can't describe how. It's either going to be amazing or it's going to be nothing. I think it'll be one
Okay.
of those two things. And so if it's amazing, there is an afterlife. Let's pretend like it's like Disneyland or Disney World. So it's going to be like Disney
Okay.
World, and if you're going to meet your friends at Disney World, and they're going to
Mhm.
get there right when the park opens, but they have no idea what time you're going to show up. You could show up 5 minutes after they do. You could show up 6 hours later. Are they going to stand at the gates and wait for you to arrive? No, they're going to go in. They're going to have fun. When you get your ass there, you can fucking call them and you guys can meet up then. And that's why I'm just like, if you're in heaven, you're not going to be standing at the pearly gates. There's going to be other things that you're going to be interested in finding out, doing. I don't know what it is, but that's kind of my feeling on, you know, when people will say, oh, well,
Okay.
but is there ever a question of like, how are we able to communicate with you? So we can obviously communicate with you, because that would be literally my next question. Wow, Dad, I can't believe I'm talking to you. How are we doing this? Has
The
there ever,
mechanism we okay.
okay,
So I have a lot to say about that. First of all, some of the mediums and a lot of people say, "Oh, the afterlife is just love and it's amazing." I have a hard time believing that. I don't see why it would be any better than here. Some
right.
things might be better, some not. The reason, like, oh, greeting you when you pass away, like, why would they have anything better to do that day? Like, I come home from college for the first time. My parents are home greeting me. They haven't seen me in months. Like, they don't have anything better to do that day than see me that they haven't seen in like 6 months for the first time in my life, or even, when your loved ones come home. Like, that's the most important thing you have to do that day is see your kids coming home from college, your wife or husband coming back from a long trip. Like, that would probably be the most important thing for
See,
them
and
to
I
do.
haven't thought of it that way. I mean, and that, because that's just not how I've processed, but that does make sense. I mean,
Hmm.
I
That's my immediate thought about that. And then it seems that time and space work a little differently over there. That I don't fully understand, but it's a different dimension. It's a different state of consciousness. It seems through the research less limited by time and space, and that your thoughts somehow can connect with them. And if they're your loved one, they're like paying attention to you and what you're doing. They most likely are doing other things, but you do other things, and then you text like your not even loved ones now, like your liked ones. You text your friends and you're like, hey, can I call you? Sure. You know, and so people you can't, they're not like, I'm too busy. These are the people you care about.
Yeah.
Like,
And so
and you could be doing cool, busy things, but and you know, you've
in my in
so
my
yeah, that's
my
important.
my thoughts of the afterlife can always be changing because no one knows, no one has a clue. So that being said, at least at this point, that's how I feel. That if no one has a clue, then I don't have to worry about being right or wrong about it. Because I remember the first time. I mean, I just grew up as a Christian, so I was like, heaven,
Okay.
hell, good, bad, blah, blah, yada, yada. And I
Okay.
remember we were in a small group at our church, and they were talking about we're talking about heaven, like what people thought. And I think I used it's either going to be great or nothing. And everyone's appalled that I said it may be nothing. But someone said, I feel like we'll be standing at the feet of Jesus for all eternity singing his praises. And hold on, I actually have a sound for this. That's literally what I did because I was like, no, 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 no. I don't have that. I love karaoke, but I don't have that good a voice. And that's not what I plan on doing for eternity. So I started thinking about it differently because I'm like, wow, we really are seeing the afterlife differently. So would we even go to the same place? And then it was funny because I was talking to one of my coworkers, which a former coworker, they're easily. So this is the stone genius. They may have been stoned, but they were not the genius part at all. And one day we were talking about, for some reason, heaven came up. And they said, well, I think I'll have a job in heaven. And it was funny because one of our other coworkers, Lenny, he was like, whoa, 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 whoa. He goes, I don't know about that. And I felt the same way. But then I started thinking about it. Well, why would we get to spend 80 years, let's say, here on Earth, and then we die, and then we just get to spend all of eternity just living on Easy Street? Everyone's got a mansion and the nicest lawn. I mean, so it's funny because I would have most of what that person said, I just would roll my eyes. And sometimes I would seem very blunt with them. But it was amazing them just saying that because then I got scared because I was like, oh my God, how about if I'm already dead and this is heaven and this is my job?
And I have thoughts like that too. I just philosophically, I've always been like, how do we know? But what I find interesting, what I think, and I know, like, so I mentioned that Laura had suggested like contact the Forever Family Foundation. I finally did. Long story short, I volunteer with them now. I do their social media, and the founders of it, Fran and Bob Ginsberg, and sadly Fran is the one who passed away, became like my main mentors. Fran became like my rock, almost like a second mom. And what she'd always say, and this is what I kind of thought too, we use the word afterlife, but that doesn't make sense. I mean, that's not the accurate word. It makes it sound like you're here and then everything afterwards. It seems to be we are some form of consciousness, and we pulsate in and out of probably different states of consciousness, different dimensions, some material, some not, some somehow this probably ties into dimensions that we get a glimpse of through string theory. But why would we be here and then go there and it's always bliss? Like, there's probably all different states, all different experiences, all sorts of forms of consciousness that we experience, probably in different planets and galaxies as well. I mean, there's no way there isn't intelligent life on other planets. I mean, we have God knows how many Goldilocks planets, and researchers keep discovering more and more solar systems and galaxies. There's definitely life on other planets. So I just think it's a very simplistic view to say we're here and then we go this other blissful place that kind of mimics here but better for all of eternity. That just makes no sense.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, we use the word afterlife, but that's just sort of the catchword. To say a better word, I would think would be like
after Earth,
different states of consciousness.
Yeah.
Just different states of consciousness.
Yeah. So when when the first medium communicated with your father, I mean, how are they able? Are you any
How?
closer to how they're able to pinpoint that one person, or is it because of your proximity, your energy?
Probably my proximity, like sometimes other people have come in. It hasn't only been my dad, like grandparents have come in, friends have come in, like other people have come in. These are my people,
And how
so that's,
accurate
and
are
animals.
are they as equally accurate with all, or not accurate, depending on who you're seeing, with all of the members, or do they seem to be more accurate the closer it was to the nuclear family as it spread out to cousins or whatever?
Oh,
Then was there any difference
good
between?
question. So no, it's really been who the medium is and my closeness. Like my mentor, Fran, who's I told you passed, and that's the one who
Uh
Laura
huh.
ended up introducing me to. She comes in when she comes in, it's very accurate.
Okay.
So it seems to be the accuracy of the medium. My grandmother comes in very accurate. Yeah, and some mediums just aren't as accurate, but I haven't noticed the accuracy of one person over another.
Ha- have
Some of
you
it
ever
depends how
been?
well I know them.
Have they ever had someone like, oh, your third cousin Eddie, who you met one? Has there ever been like some obscure, but they were still
Maybe there are people I haven't fully recognized. I'm like, that might be. I could kind of make it fit,
okay,
which isn't scientific, but it's just
right?
interesting.
Okay,
Yes, and I don't know. I mean, I would sort of, I'm like, maybe that's this person. I don't know.
okay, okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
as the continuing,
And you asked me, am I closer to how this works?
yes.
Um, okay, so theories we don't know. There are two researchers called Dr. Stuart Hameroff and Sir Roger Penrose, and one of them, maybe both of them, they both won Nobel prizes as researchers and physicists and scientific research.
Ooh, the
Um,
Nobel
and
Prize.
one
Ooh,
of
cool.
Hey, I haven't won one.
I
I
know, I
think it's
haven't
cool.
either.
I'm not. I mean, yeah. So, and I'm probably never gonna win one. So, and one of them, if not both of them, I would have to get the accuracy on this. So I'm gonna say it slightly vaguely, but one of them, if not both of them, worked with Stephen Hawking. So
Wow.
these are not idiots, and
Right.
they have studied aspects of consciousness, and they have come up with something called the microtubules in the brain, and it's a whole theory that I wish I was smart enough to explain in detail. You're a genius, so maybe you could read it and explain it better than me. But essentially, parts of our brain they think could be aspects that downloads consciousness that's non-local. So if I could guess
The
at this
Akashic
point,
Record. Have you
if
ever heard of the Akashic Record?
I have,
Yeah.
but I would word it personally a little differently.
Okay.
And I have thoughts on the Akashic Record I can say too, but because it's not as woo as it sounds. But so there seems to be there's some form of our consciousness seems to be in some form of a cloud that's non-local that somehow quantum entangles with our brain. If it's in this dimension, maybe one day, and who knows how many years, something a more advanced Large Hadron Collider could measure it. It's just everything we learn as time goes on gets more and more complex and deep, and we know nothing. I mean, we just everything we learn, we realize there's so much more we don't know. So if I could guess it, somehow quantum entangles. It's stored somewhere in quantum entangles with our brain. Somehow microtubules. I will say that sounds like the most we know so far, and I'm only saying
Right.
that because of the prestige of Sir Roger Penrose and Dr. Stuart Hameroff, who are much smarter than me. So, yeah, that's the closest we have to understanding the mechanism as of now.
Okay. I want to circle back to the bad psychic, or actually even the good psychics.
Okay, there's
Would
good,
you
bad, and good.
would you be able to ever like talk to other clients, or has there ever been a study done? Like you said that someone was bad, that they just didn't get anything right.
Yes,
But could they,
yes,
with someone else, have been just as accurate as the very first person you saw that was so accurate? So
yes,
could they have had a
yes.
different? Okay,
Not like one of them I can tell you is an outright fake, but there are ones that I no, that have passed and been certified by Forever Family Foundation and have been certified by Winbridge, and their testing's hard. You basically have to, you don't know who you're reading, it's on the phone. I don't know all the details. Um, I mean, yeah, well, okay, Dr. Julie Beischel has the studies. Forever Family, I know aspects of the details. You have to get accurate information above a certain percent. You have
Okay.
to, and with, for example, Dr. Julie Beischels, you just telephone a number and answer it. And that there are points where the person, just one of the studies, there are multiple options, but one example will be where the people just say yes or no or maybe. I mean, that's all I say in readings. But there's others where they don't even bring their voice in. There's a button for yes, a button for no, and a button for I don't know. And so the medium can't even pick up cues off the person's voice. So, and
Okay.
some of these good mediums are getting accurate. And some of these mediums, like there's one that I know personally. She also is certified by Forever Family Foundation. I had an excellent reading with her, and I sent a friend to her, and the friend got, and she got nothing from my friend. So this is what I think makes an ethical medium. After 20 minutes, if they feel they're getting nothing, or however long, I can't say,
Right.
and they're getting nothing but no, no, the medium will say, I'm sorry, I don't think I'm connecting. I will cancel your session and refund it. Versus,
So
and that
could a
happens.
client say? I mean, could the person having the reading initiate that? Go, you've literally got nothing right the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that's perfectly appropriate to do.
Okay.
I didn't do that with my terrible reading. I've had a couple terrible just because I'm kind of researching and I'm like,
Right.
want to see what's going to happen.
Right.
But yeah, if you are truly there just for grief and not also researching and not just curious and not want to see what happens, yeah, you have every right after, like, not, don't say it at the end of an hour. That's
Right.
just not very cool. But like, and I don't know what the exact cutoff is, but after, like, let's say 10 minutes, maybe 20 is a little much, but after, like, say, like 10, 15 minutes, they are getting nothing. You have every right to say, I'm sorry, you got nothing accurate. I would like a refund and to
So it
cancel.
should be like if you go out to eat a meal and the meal's horrible and you don't want it, don't eat like all of it and then say it's bad. So
Exactly.
you can try and then you'll just know that point where it's not getting any better. I am not doing this. So okay.
Right.
Okay. So I wanted to also ask how many foundations are there that I guess accreditation's not the correct term, but
Um,
that
I
are
don't
yes.
I don't know.
Okay.
I know of Windbridge and I know of Forever Family Foundation. I know that the Division of Perceptual Studies at University of Virginia, they don't accredit, but they research.
Okay.
They do studies with mediums, and yeah, I know some other universities, I believe, do so as well. Um, but
So if someone
you know,
is searching for themselves, they're now interested or have been interested in finding a medium, regardless of where they happen to be. What would be is Google your friend at that point? Is it not? What would
no,
be the best place to try to find someone that's going to be most beneficial?
I would go to the Forever Family Foundation
Okay.
because they're also trained in grief. Windbridge good too, but yeah, I would go to the Forever Family Foundation. There are others that are good, I believe. Like ones, there's like a whole group from England. There's a school at the Arthur Findlay College, and some of the teachers who teach there are really good. Same with the teachers through a place called The Journey Within. Those teachers at both of those places are really good, and it's a lot of the same people. And some of them are also certified by the Forever Family Foundation. And yeah, I would go to the Forever
Okay.
Family Foundation. Windbridge good too, yeah.
Okay. So when you see a medium now, are you always because I don't even know how you initiate it. So would you are you trying to do you say I want to reach out to a specific person like your father, or is it just started and it's like, oh, here's who?
Usually, you never say who you want to reach out to.
Okay.
I have had one or two. I think there was one who said she just finds it easier. Tell me who you want to reach out to. That, I don't think that's ideal,
Okay.
but she gave a very evidential reading, so she's not fake. I was very impressed with the information she got.
Okay. So how does this change your personal perception of your mortality? Or does it?
It completely does, 100%. I think it's most likely. I am absolutely convinced that the laws of the universe operate in different ways than we think, because I have seen things happen that are not possible.
You've been reading my notes again. I mean, those are part of my notes because that's literally like we just assume because, some of the videos I watch, they're like, oh, well, when we look at this point of a black hole, our version of physics breaks down. It's like, well, maybe they're not right to begin. I mean, maybe they're pretty darn right. So I'm sorry to interject that, but yeah, that's exactly some of the notes that I have.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it seems most likely that our consciousness does survive. But, I mean, there's still the question, how long does that last? Is it going to happen in, a trillion years? Is consciousness just a temporary state?
And
But
I
it
wonder
definitely,
if it is tied to this earth, like of this earth ever. Because if we're energy and the energy is stored somehow, and I'm just spitballing at this point, but like if once we pass, or we're energy and that energy is somehow transferred into, like if earth ever ceases to exist, which I guess then we
it
would,
will.
then we wouldn't
Yeah.
be here to reach out to him, so it wouldn't really matter anyway. So yeah.
I
So
have no idea if we could live if our consciousness does last for a long, long time. What happens after the Big Bang? I mean, the Big Crunch, and
yeah.
my God, there's probably multiple Big Bangs, Big Crunches through all times in different universes or different galaxies. Maybe there's multiverses. I think I wouldn't be surprised if there are multiverses. But yeah, what happens after the Big Crunch?
Yeah.
Our planet's going to go out. Our sun is going to go out before the Big Crunch. Maybe we'll have the science to mimic it, but we'll still survive. Maybe not. We also seem to be destroying the planet in many ways now.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we're doing a tremendous job with this home that we have.
uh,
So, well, so
yeah.
what is the most exciting thing on the horizon for you? Whether it's a reading that you're having with a certain medium, whether it's something upcoming in your research, what's the most exciting thing for you, Liz, on the horizon?
Oh my God, all of it's so exciting. I can't say one more than the other. It's just constantly like seeing the laws of the universe defied. I mean, I guess I'm writing my second book now. That's really fun. A lot of the guests on my podcast
There we go. Now the crowd finally gets involved.
Thank you. Oh, I appreciate that.
So, what's this? Is the second book a follow up to the first, or what's going on with the second book? Can you give us a preview of what that is going to, what you're looking at with that novel, or excuse me, that book?
The book, yeah, it's pretty much going to pick up where this book left off. It's going to have more experiences I've had. It's going to have, I kind of pick up. The other book sort of ends as I've just become friends with some mediums. This goes into a lot more friendships with the mediums, some more research. Like I do experiments with one of them, this really good medium, Joe Peretta, who's become also a close friend. It goes into just kind of everything that happened. Probably I'd say, let's see, the other book ends around like 2017. So this goes probably 2017 through 2020 about this research.
Okay.
Things that happen, just from my personal, just more like absolutely what the fuck's out that happened that I see and experience.
And you'll have to forgive me as I am also a stoner. So if I've already asked this, but I wanted to ask if for a medium that you used a alias with, and then you give them, do you transition to that? Do you, because I mean, when they find out who you really are, does that ever change the dynamics?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I don't usually say, "Oh, this is my real name" in the first few minutes.
Right.
At the
No,
so
but I mean, it
sometimes
sounds like you've become friendly with some of them. So I just wondered at what point
I
were you?
don't usually get readings with the ones I'm friends with now, unless it's like in a group. I mean, I get if I know I'm going to go to an event where these mediums are, I've already gotten a reading with
Okay.
them. I'd say that one Laura, I'm still on her wait list, and now I've gotten to know her. So that will be the first one that I'm getting like a private reading with that I've known for a while. I'd say there was like a couple where I became friends with them at an event. I, for whatever reason, wasn't able to get a reading before, and then I've given them my name.
Right.
But they knew stuff that was not really Googleable. They knew stuff they couldn't have known, those ones. I mean, they were still really incredible readings. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I just, and when I think about it, part of my personality is I'm not much into small talk. And even though I loved my grandparents, and my dad, it's like, you know what? I don't know what I would talk to you about right now. I mean, and I feel, and it's weird because I do not process, I probably haven't even processed the grief of him passing in the years since he's passed, but that's just kind of me. So I think it would be interesting to find, I think it would be more interesting just to see whether is someone that I went to really knew, because I would be more blown away by that than communicating with my dad. That would be secondary to me, actually, or communicating with anyone.
It's them getting the information. I don't know.
Right.
To me, I'm just like, holy shit, they're defying the laws of the universe. Like, that's something that just...
Yeah. See, I think that would be interesting.
It's so profound. It's like going into outer space and exploring planets. It's just like you're literally exploring, like, the depths of the possibility of other dimensions and states of consciousness. And just, it's just, so they're just saying something like small talky, but it's factual. It's so profound. They're literally showing survival of consciousness. They're showing evidence of the biggest question of all of humanity, one of the biggest. And that's just, and to me, there's something very powerful that you get this evidence in mundane ways. Like,
right.
And that seems to be across the board from the information the mediums get. Like, this was your dad's favorite meal, for example. And it's just this profundity in the normal, profundity, in the normal that is so amazing. And that's also what, like, the research of Dr. Jim Tucker says. He's like, and that was one thing that I found really evidential and powerful about not only the medium readings, but also the cases of the kids with the past life memories, the research of Dr. Tucker and Stevenson, and there's others who do great stuff, I believe, like Jim Matlock. It's very mundane in the most, like, beautiful way. Like, the kids' memories aren't like these grand castles. They're like stuff that really means something in our lives.
Right.
Just, like having tea at their grandma's house after school, like their favorite candy bar. It's like the memories are, and some are very dramatic, the memories, but those are trauma memories of, like, the way of dying.
Right.
But the good memories are just the stuff we really care about,
I was just sitting here while you were talking. I was also thinking and I know it wouldn't matter about proximity because sometimes it's done over the phone and not even don't. I guess if it's not, I'm trying. Sometimes I try to work stuff out of my head as I'm just thinking about it, because I was trying to figure out whether someone would be able to, that maybe they're not actually contacting this person, but they're able to not read you like it's a gimmick or a parlor trick, but literally, just like if they could contact your father, then they could contact inner you. And no, because I'm the only one that would know that besides my dad. Well, you're the only one there. You're the only one that's there in front of them. So I'm not saying that, I'm still saying that it's still dimension blowing and it's still mind blowing.
There's research about that.
Okay.
Psychic versus medium. Dr. Julie Beischel with Winbridge, as well as others like Dr. Tarrant have studied the difference between psychic and medium readings. There's different brain waves when they do EEG brain activity.
Right.
Mediums say it feels different, which, that could be anecdotal, but it's anecdotal, but anecdotal evidence is still evidence.
Right.
And at times they know things that you didn't know that then gets verified.
Okay. So they may something and you'll be like, and then you like look it up late. Okay.
But even so, if they're reading your mind, that's still defying the law.
No, and I'm still saying that's impressive. But sometimes they say you have to go to what's the easiest. Well, maybe it's just easiest that they're, however that is. That because that's what I would think. That somehow, I don't know how. Even if I'm pushing buttons on a phone to say yes, no, I don't know. I still feel like I don't know how energy works. I don't get the universe. I spend way too
think
much
any of us
time.
do.
Yeah, I spend way too much time thinking about shit that I shouldn't. I mean, just ask my wife. I mean, I'm not sure. Once again, and this is where I always have to remember there's a reason there's a yin and a yang, is that I always say, if I know that there's a God, I know that there is something out there. There's no way I would have met my wife otherwise. That being said, she probably says, this proves that Satan is real. There is a hell, and I'm living it here on earth. So sometimes it's just your point of view and how that works. Because when I say that, it's funny because I literally, and I have confirmation of the story. It's been known since the day after, but the day after I met my wife, I said, that's a girl I'm going to marry. I didn't know how. Wow. And in fact, my dad, when he met my mom, it was weird because they married 10 months after they had met. And I go, how did that? And you guys, they were married until he passed they were almost to their 60th wedding anniversary. And I was like, how do you know? He goes, I just knew. He goes, I knew that first night. And I used to always say bullshit.
I have heard that.
I said bullshit. That. I was like, that's not proof. You need, well, I knew because they were a good Christian woman and they went to church, or they were a great cook, or all the above, or anything. Just have something more than I just knew it. And so I was like, whatever. And then the night I met my now wife is, I had two roommates, a guy and a girl, and my wife worked with Kristen. And so the next morning I told Kristen, I met the girl I'm going to marry. And even though she wouldn't talk to me for 2 weeks after that, my wife, then we've been inseparable since then. But somehow but see, she didn't. Like, I wanted to see her that next day. I wanted to see her every day. I didn't want it to start 2 weeks later, but she didn't. I mean, so it's just weird how, things are different, but so there's an energy, there's something going on that I can't quantify. And that's why I think what you're doing is just fascinating. I mean, the research on this, because, I would like to know, I think that would be cool. And if I could literally here's the one question. If I could ask any question of any person that's gone on before me, and I could get an answer for that one question, I would want to go to my grandmother, Mama Jane. I would say, how the fuck do you make those cinnamon rolls? Because no one can do that. So,
wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that would be the one question I would have. I just would think it would be interesting to find someone that would be able to, like I say, whether it's me and there's somehow feeling that energy, pulling that memory, whatever, however they're getting that information, whether it's me or they're actually taught, a memory of me with my dad or getting it from my dad. Either way, it's still just as amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, so do you have an ETA for your next book?
No, I don't. But if you follow me on Instagram and my website, my email list, you can know.
There we go. It's WTFJustHappened.net. And then your Instagram is WTF Just Happened, correct?
It's at WTF_just_happened.
Okay.
It's also linked to that on my website. And
yep. And I will.
I love the story about your wife, by the way. It's very encouraging.
What's that?
Finding love, so.
Well,
your wife,
yeah, but it was encouraging for me, but not for her. I mean, so we have a podcast also called The Longest One Night Stand with Bobby and Rose. So the first night she did go home with me, we didn't have sex. Second time, I think she did go home with me. I think we did have sex. So, and then we had a baby 9.5 months later. So that's why it's called that. But I always say that I had to put so I knew the next morning or the day I met her, whenever. I knew within the first 12 hours that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. It literally took me putting a baby in her for her to figure out she wanted to spend 27 years and counting at this point with me. So, but yeah, I'm encouraging because now, I will tell you this also, that sometimes you find out information later in life. So my dad had always told me he had met my mom. Their very first night that they went out, he knew that he wanted to marry her, and so they got married 10 months later.
Right.
So after he passed, when I was talking in stories with my mom, I brought that up. She goes, oh, well, we had a discussion that first night. I go about spending the rest of your lives together. And she goes, yes. And she goes, we both thought it was a very fiscally responsible for us to do.
Oh my God, that's so funny. But people rationalize.
They do, but it was funny because
it's fiscally responsible, but they could also have all the emotions too.
True. But it was just funny because when she said that, I literally was like, hold on, I think I got a sound for that. Because I had based my whole premise of I will do the universe, God, whoever, whatever is gonna tell me when I meet that someone special. I thought that it did. So, but it is interesting. Wow. So I think, and I highly recommend, no matter who that person is, gosh, dang, it's kind of fun having that right person. Yeah.
Yeah.
And her and I have so many inside jokes that if one of us passed on before, we'd definitely know whether they were telling the truth. Actually, that's not true. All the medium would have to be like, they'd be like, I see the number 69. I'd be like, oh my God, you got Bobby. What's up, baby? So, yeah. So.
Oh, you guys sound like fun.
We try to be every once in a while. So, Liz, thank you so much for being on the program.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
well,
I mean.
So you can listen to my podcast too. You can find that all of the information is on the website for my podcast too.
And I will put a link to all of your links on my social media when this comes out as well. Amazing. So for everyone that follows my Instagram, you'll be able to see all that there. I say on my social media, but it's really Instagram because I am 55 and that's about as far as I can go with it. But Liz, I appreciate you being on the show. I hope that you'll be on the show again. One thing about my show that I didn't mention to you is for some reason, a lot of the listeners like to reach out to me, which is great. I don't mind that. I appreciate the feedback and the comments and everything. So I'm sure that I will hear a lot of feedback about this episode, and I'm sure that I will have a lot of questions coming. Go, why didn't you ask this? Why didn't you ask this? So I am sure that we will have another full podcast at some point if you'll be so kind as to return maybe.
Sure, this was such a fun conversation. Yeah, I'll come on and answer the questions that your listeners want me to ask. That sounds good.
Okay, that would be so amazing. So, Liz, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Hey, for everyone else, thank you for listening to the Stone Genius Podcast. My name's Ro. Remember, I'm often stoned. I'm always a genius. Talk to y'all later.